protesters outside, and I want to address it a little bit. So I've spent my entire career, which is almost 30 years at this point, working incredibly hard for the community, working very hard when I was in private practice and as a prosecutor to protect the rights of victims and protect the rights of the community. So, is it upsetting for myself and Mr. Russell to see protesters outside? Yes. And the reason it's so upsetting is because, and I want to explain it to you, I cannot count the number of times that we've sat with somebody who's lost somebody, who's lost a family member, or who's been the victim of a crime, or who's lost an animal because of animal cruelty, and held their hands and cried with them. I am one of the hugest animal supporters, victim supporters that anybody could ever meet. And I will tell you, and Steve will tell you, that when we watched the videos of what the people are protesting about, it made us cry. It makes us cry. We abhor any kind of violence towards animals. We abhor any kind of violence towards people. It is the absolutely worst thing that beings do is to hurt animals and to hurt people. So I want to say we have some people here from the sheriff's office tonight, and you know, this was on our radar. These slaughterhouses were on our radar for a couple of years. And the sheriff's office had a very involved undercover operation going at those slaughterhouses. They had put a confidential informant, and I have permission to talk about this, they had put a confidential informant into place to investigate. At some point, the folks from ARM came into the picture and said, we want to investigate, and the sheriff's office met with them and said, absolutely, you can investigate, you have to be a confidential informant. And by the way, folks, the reason we have, when we have a confidential informant, there's a law that is in place called Rachel's Law. You may not be familiar with it, but there was a young woman in Tallahassee, Dane's nodding his head, he knows what I'm talking about. She went to FSU, she was a confidential informant, and she got killed. And the legislature put into place a very good law called Rachel's Law that requires confidential informants to work under the guidance of law enforcement so that nobody gets hurt. Unfortunately, that did not occur here. This organization would not work with law enforcement. They would not sign the confidential informant contract, and the confidential informant that law enforcement had in already was burned and was not able to be used. So after 2 years of very hard work, the investigation was unable to come to fruition, although I will tell you this, all those slaughterhouses have been closed down, and they will not be allowed to operate in our area. Eric Smith is here with me, and we will make sure that that does not happen. So I know many of you wanted to hear about that. It's a horrible thing. The tape that you all have seen, I know many of you have seen it. I've seen it. It's horrendous. It's not admissible in evidence because it was not taken under the guidance of law enforcement recording. And there is and this is how strong this law is for those of you who don't know this. We had a case a couple years ago. Our office has fought so hard with this illegal recording law in Florida that if you take a recording without the people knowing and without the law enforcement guiding you to do it, it's not admissible in court. And there's just no two ways about it. And let me tell you, we had a case a few years ago that we fought up to the Florida Supreme Court where a little girl who had been sexually abused for years by her father tape recorded him admitting to the sexual abuse. And we looked at it, we knew it was a surreptitiously recorded video, and what we did was say, well, let's try it and see if we can make it work. And we tried the case, it came back on appeal, it went up to the Florida Supreme Court, and they said you absolutely cannot use this type of evidence. They reversed us, and we went to trial again without the recording, and the guy was acquitted. So let me tell you, we don't ever shy away from difficult prosecution. We've been told by the Florida Supreme Court that we cannot use that type of thing. And ethically as attorneys, therefore, we are absolutely barred from doing that. and it is heartbreaking. I'm the first one to stand in front of you and tell you that as your next state attorney, I will fight hard every day for the rights of animals. I've done it my whole career. I did it when I was in private practice. I did a lot of pro bono work for people who were involved with animal shelters, for victims who had been battered women. I did all my pro bono work in those areas, and I will continue as your next state attorney to fight very hard for the rights of the abused, whether it be an animal or a person.